This will be a question for anybody. When was Yodlee founded? Anybody know in the U.S.? Biggest aggregator? I looked it up today, 1998. 1998. This stuff has been around forever and a day. It's not new. It's hilarious that it took to 2020 for JPMorgan to really come and make a stance. All right, our first story, JPMorgan, the largest bank in the U.S. JPMorgan gives fintechs data access deadline. This is a story from Reuters. Fintechs must sign data access agreements before July 30th if they want to get customer data from the bank. You have to love Jamie Dimon. Companies must also present a concrete plan, and I did that in quotation signals, to move away from using customer passwords. The policy will effectively halt the use of screen scraping. A JPMorgan spokesman told Reuters that the bank already has deals in place for more than 95% of data access requests. The bank hopes to make fintechs connect to accounts through its own APIs, which it says will help secure and protect customers' data. Companies that sign the agreement wouldn't need to abandon screen scraping right away. Instead, they'll have to provide a transition plan and show they're making progress toward that goal. All right, so among major U.S. banks, what's the attitude toward open banking? I love this. I'm the American in the room, and I'm asking the table. Hey, David.
I mean, it's an interesting one, right? I mean, you kind of feel like if open banking was a thing there, this wouldn't be something that one bank is taking a stand to sort of do to a certain degree. Because essentially, I mean, creating a standard, if JPMorgan on its own creating a standard and adhering to the APIs and all the services and everything that they want to put out, just seems like pretty sort of dangerous territory for me. So, I mean, I'd say the regulator probably should be playing a bigger part in this. But I mean, Sam, you're the American in the group. What do you think?
Oh, we love regulators in the U.S. I mean, the reality in the U.S., if you're going to wait on the federal government and U.S. regulators to come up with something that screen scraping. This will be a question for anybody. When was Yodlee founded? Anybody know in the U.S.? Biggest aggregator? I looked it up today, 1998. 1998. This stuff has been around forever and a day. It's not new. It's hilarious that it took to 2020 for JPMorgan to really come and make a stance, but this isn't the first time.
I mean, the article says fintechs have been skeptical, arguing that it should be up to consumers, not banks, to decide what companies can look at, like what information. So to your point, David, but I think at the end of the day, consumers often don't realize the extent of information that they're sharing. So perhaps enforcing some level of control might be a good thing. If you look at the data breaches last year where you had sort of customer passwords and email addresses being sold, the breaches were really from British Airways and Hilton. The Experian, it's more rare that it happens with regulated banks, right? Because they're having to invest so much in cybersecurity. It's so high on their agendas. So in that way, perhaps actually, if someone was going to enforce it in the US, then perhaps a bank doing it is probably a good place to start. I
mean, I definitely get it. It's the conversations that we had with open banking, right? It's like, hey, don't give your username and password away. Oh, you've done it. Something bad has happened. Am I liable or you? And it's difficult, isn't it? Because arguably the customer doesn't really care until there's a problem. So they'll give away any bits of information to like get on Mint or whatever. But it feels like it's an industry problem rather than an individual organizational problem, which is probably a better way of saying it than I did a minute ago.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about customer data and you think about, the access to that and actually processing information around it, I find this very opportunistic that we have the CEO of an incredibly large global processing company literally sitting right next to me.
I feel like you're about to put her on the spot.
Did you like that? Yeah. I am literally queuing you up around that question. But I mean, when you look at this, that concept of data, right? I think for the U.S., this whole becomes a huge argument about whose data is it? Is it the consumer? Is it the banks? I mean, really, who owns this?
I think the question for me more is, the value of APIs in all of this. I mean, what we've had, and certainly where we fit in the ecosystem as a processor, is that we've been API driven from the outset, and what that has created is enormous value in flexibility and control that's being given to the end consumer. And so anything that is using the relative security of APIs, which has to, anything has to be better than screen scraping, doesn't it?
One would hope. Yes.
Is really driving in the right direction. So,
and because I don't know, because I haven't lived here for a little while, when it comes to the UK banks, and obviously you guys set the standard that we always look to for open banking that in the U.S. we will never, ever adopt. By the way, let me just go ahead and say that. We're rebels by that. But in working with banks and in working with other fintechs, because that's what we're talking about, right? Interoperability, the APIs, how easy is it to almost do this plug and play? Is the industry overall at a ease of use level, do you think, Carl? And I'm talking for the UK.
I think the evidence suggests we're getting there if we're not already. But I also think that greater collaboration between whatever services are using open banking and large banks themselves is probably only going to be a good thing for consumers. And maybe the cynic in me thinks JPMorgan is actually playing for M&A opportunities, because if you've got smaller firms who are screen scraping and taking the easy way, which is completely their right, if you force them to increase their costs somehow by having to engage with an API and jump through a bunch of loopholes and phase out their old technology, all of a sudden they need a bit more money. JPMorgan standing there perhaps with a massive wad of cash ready to buy up and take control of some of these fintechs. You've seen Morgan Stanley do it today even, buying a trading platform, another trading platform I should say.
So Carl's referring to the $13 billion, I think it was, $13 billion all-stock acquisition by Morgan Stanley for E-Trade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
That seems to be what's happening every day in 2020 is some major announcement about somebody being acquired. I mean, this has been a rather fun year.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the story, I think it's like we should remember it's like the UK has we're in a good place right now, but not all of this was because we chose to be, or not because the banks chose to be. The banks could have exposed APIs for a decade, but it took consolidated regulation to make it actually happen, right? So I think we sort of look back with quite rose-tinted glasses sometimes at aren't we great and aren't we smart? But actually PSD2 and open banking was a real hard slog for a long period of time.
And it's still going, right? I mean, people a majority of customers or consumers still haven't opted in. They're still not really aware of it. I think we always kind of get into a bit of a fintech bubble thinking that everybody is as excited about open banking as we all are. But, you talk to the average Joe on the street and they have no idea what it is. So that's kind of going to be the biggest thing is that adoption level. That's going to be the determination of whether it's successful or not.
So in other words, the market will actually drive where this goes. Yeah, I mean, I as usual, I applaud. I don't have an issue with Jamie Dimon setting the standard. I've said this a few times. In the U.S., JPMorgan, they actually came out in their last earnings statement and said that 50% of U.S. consumers of age have some level of an account with JPMorgan. They're you have that terminology, too big to fail, or too big to ignore. So if somebody's going to help drive a standard and set it from the market, they're probably a good one. All right, with that, let's